guys.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Well, I'm sure you remember Monday we started our unit on identity, and you guys made those really cool word clouds.
Yeah.
And in the middle, it said identity. And one of your little subcategories down here was creation. And all of you, I looked over your word clouds, you had some really cool stuff in there. Some people make music, some people create art, some people like to write. But right now what I want you to do is think about the things that you put under creation, the creations that really identify you as who you are as a unique person. And then I want you to get out your journals and write about this prompt. I want you to think about those creations and how you would feel if someone took them from you or if someone tried to pass them off as their work. And if you've ever experienced anything like this with a friend or a classmate, you can write about that too. Okay? So write about that for a few minutes and then we'll come back to the word and talk about it. Take maybe just another minute. Okay, would anyone like to share their feelings about this? Talk about the creations that you really identify with and how you would feel if this happened to you? Or if you've had an experience with it, if you'd like to share that. Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, my brothers always steal my ideas. We come up with these really cool things to do, and I'll like talk about it, and I'll go tell my mom. And then she's like, "Oh, that's such an awesome idea, but it's really mine." And then I get really mad because I can't say it was my idea, because then she's not going to believe me.
Okay. Marjorie?
Okay. Well, I was in work study, and we were not actually doing the work we were supposed to do. So this girl went and told on us, and I called her the golden snitch. And my sister stole the story, and she had all the laughs. And I thought it was a very creative moment in my life.
Did you feel betrayed?
I was a little upset, yes.
Yeah. Did you feel like she had stolen your glory somehow?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's
Okay.
exactly how I felt.
That's what I'm saying. Now, do you think in your experiences creating things, do you think that you've ever taken something that belonged to somebody else? Even if it wasn't necessarily on purpose. Do you think you've ever done that?
Probably.
You think so?
Yeah, I think we should.
Well, yeah, and think about maybe your favorite book, okay? Who wants to share, tell me what your favorite book is? Oh, I knew you were going to do it, Michelle. What's your favorite book?
Harry Potter.
I know. And you know what? I also know that you really like to write, okay? So sometimes when you sit down and you start writing, do you ever look back on it and think, this looks oddly familiar or has a feeling that's somewhat reminiscent of the books that you love?
I try to stay away from magical characters because they all end up with the names Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and it gets a little awkward.
Yeah.
So I try to stay away from it.
Well, it's good that you recognize that, because I know that I myself have been guilty of it. I mean, I have authors that I really love, and especially poetry. It's really easy because I like to memorize poetry. And I know, because that's just how I am. But once something is in your mind that way, it's really hard not to have it come out on the paper, you know? I mean, you love the poem, it's already in your mind. So occasionally you can make a mistake, but you need to really look at things carefully and make sure that you're not kind of ripping off the people who you admire most, okay? And they do say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but today we're going to talk about a specific case where at least one author didn't feel that way, okay? And to begin, we're just going to look at a really brief definition of plagiarism, which I'm sure you guys already know, but it's to steal someone else's work and pass it off as your own. Don't do that. Now, the case that we're going to talk about today involves an author by the name of Kavya Viswanathan, and I'm just going to call her Ms. V because her name's really long and I'm not very good at pronouncing it. But she was a freshman, I believe, at Harvard. Very, very bright, very accomplished young woman. And she published her first book as a freshman at the age of 19 and was almost immediately accused of plagiarism. You will find, and we're going to read an article about her, she claims that her plagiarism was unintentional. Okay? So I want you to look at this just for a second before we get into this article, because unintentional plagiarism is quite specific, okay? You're pretty much just not citing properly, giving people credit, but you're also using chunks of their work very often. And I've seen this in the classroom. I actually had a student turn in a poem to me, and I thought it was beautiful. And about halfway through it, I read a line that somewhere I said, that just seems so familiar to me. So I started Googling lines from the poem, and what she had done was she had mixed together lines from like 3 different poems and just put them in different order. But they were pretty much just cut and pasted, and she had just changed the order and mixed some poems together. Don't do that. It's not a good idea. And you'll see that this is kind of what happened in this same case here. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at passages from Ms. V's novel and from the novel, 2 different novels actually, by the author Megan McCafferty, who wrote the originals that Ms. V is accused of plagiarizing. So on the left, you have How Opal Meta Got Kissed, Got Wild, and Got a Life by Ms. V. And on the right, we have Sloppy First by Megan McCafferty. Okay, I'm going to read the passage from Ms. V. Moneypenny was the brainy female character, yet another example of how every girl had to be one or the other, smart or pretty. I had long resigned myself to Category 1 as long as it got me to Harvard. I was happy, except it hadn't gotten me to Harvard. Clearly, it was time to switch to Category 2. And who would like to read the original for me on the right? Thank you.
Sabrina was the brainy angel, yet another example of how every girl had to be one or the other, pretty or smart. Guess which one I got. You'll see where it's gotten me.
Do you guys see any similarities?
A lot.
Okay. Can you point out something that's just really blatant to you? Yes, Michelle?
The word brainy.
Yeah.
That's italicized.
It's italicized in both, right? Anything else? Ashley?
Yeah, another example of how every girl had to be the warner.
Okay. All right. April, did you have another one?
Well, I was going to say that, but then at the end, too, it's not worded the same, but, you know, like the first one, she's talking about how she'll have to switch And then in the original, you know, she's like, you know, guess, you know, it's similar, but it's not exactly the same.
Right.
I say they both use like where it's gotten me. The first one phrases it a little differently, but you can clearly tell that both of them weren't happy with being brainy, so there's probably going to be a switch going on somewhere.
Okay, so but you do see the similarities, and you see how this is pretty obvious. Okay, just got a couple more passages that I want us to look at. Okay, 5 department stores and 170 specialty shops later, I was sick of listening to her hum along to Alicia Keys. Matt, do you want to read?
Sure.
Thank you.
Finally, 4 major department stores and 170 specialty shops later, we were done.
Really?
Okay.
That's a long day.
And down here on the left, Savannah, will you read that for me?
I had even begun to recognize his cologne, sweet and woodsy and spicy, like the sandalwood keychains sold as souvenirs in India.
And he wants to read this last one for me. Thank you, Ashley.
He smelled sweet and woodsy like cedar shavings.
Okay. So there are a lot of similarities here, obviously. And you can see how the case could be made by Ms. McCafferty that Ms. V ripped her off. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let you read an article from the New York Times about this case. And it's going to give you a little bit of insight into Ms. V's world, as well as the world of her agent and her editor at the publishing company that published her book. So I'm going to give you guys each a copy of this, and I'm going to give you a few minutes to read through it. You're welcome. And you're welcome to write on these. If you find something that jumps out, underline it, circle it, whatever you want to do. almost finished. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come around to each table and I'm going to give you a sheet of paper. And at the top of the paper, you're going to have someone's name. You're either going to have Megan McCafferty, who you will recall wrote the original novels, Ms. V, who's accused of ripping her off. You may have Susie Jones. Now, Susie Jones is someone I invented, and she is a consumer. And poor Susie Jones bought this book, and she thought that it was going to be a new and original young adult novel. And lo and behold, she had already read all of Ms. McCafferty's books. And it just was so obvious to her. She is not happy. And then we have Jennifer Rudolph Walsh, who is Ms. V's literary agent, okay? And you have their names, and then you have a brief description of maybe what their job is, what their role in this whole situation might be. And then you have some really specific questions that I want you to think about as a group. Because after you discuss this and answer these questions, we're going to have a debate. Okay? What I want you to do is, no matter how you personally feel about this, I want you to try to see it from the perspective of the person on your sheet. Okay? So you may, in your heart, believe that Miss V totally ripped somebody off, but I want you to try to see it from her point of view, if that's who you get. Okay? And I'm going to come around and make sure that you guys are having a good conversation about it, and you're really digging deep to find out how these people might feel. So you're the literary agent.
Right.
Yeah. And there's some interesting information about her one too.
Is she the one that made her cut out the wrong character and at the graduation speech, or was that the editor?
I think that was the editor, but it's interesting because I think they mentioned specifically that she had shown her a book, or something that she had written that was similar to The Lovely Bones.
Oh, yeah.
And she recognized immediately.
And just said it was darker.
And she did, but yeah, she just did, it wasn't that it was too similar to that.
No,
It's
it's
that
not.
she just didn't like that
It
genre.
could have been somewhere.
Well,
I
right.
guess we haven't read that. It might
It says right here, it says Miss P said that she had written a piece in the
Yeah, Ms. V also said, I have photographic memory and I totally didn't do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
So that's interesting too.
Can I just say Jorge was Jorge's and everything?
So who are you guys? You're,
Literary agents are both writers and negotiators.
Susie?
Literary agents think about it.
Of course she's not very about those.
Champion for the coaching world.
Well, what do you think?
They also help her author navigate a long-term career. So, she will play in this process and Jennifer Rudolph Walsh.
Well, I think not all books are great, but I wonder because well, they're actually pages. Yeah, those are just simple ones that are interesting. But it's interesting at the end, the quote from Ms. V. It says, you know, it's basically like, I didn't mean to do her any harm, but, you know, I really admire her work. All right, you guys. So tonight, for homework, I want you to come up with some really good answers to these questions because, and this is on the blog, so take a look at this tonight so that you'll know what we're going to do. Tomorrow we're going to have a Socratic circle, okay? And I'll go over with all the procedures with you before we do it, but do try to take a look at this tonight on the blog. And make sure that you have some really, really good answers to those questions, some things that will keep you talking for a little while, okay? All right, thank you.